It's been part of scandals, but veiled in secrecy. Little known about it. We're talking about the enterprise formerly known as the Blackwater Group. But a new book may help answer many of those lingering questions. Suzanne Simons is the author of Master of War. She's also a CNN executive producer, and she is joining us this morning from New York. Suzanne, thanks so much for being with us. This book has been highly anticipated. In fact, a lot of people really curious about this organization. You got incredible access. Tell us how you did it.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it took a while. Start to finish, the project lasted about 3 years. And one of the biggest projects I had was to try to convince them to let me, as a reporter, inside the company. And it wasn't easy to do. But, you know, you've seen a lot of the media has come down very negative on the company. They were very frustrated that none of their positive messages were getting out. And I think ultimately that's probably why they granted me access and allowed me. But, you know, I traveled to Afghanistan with Erik, who's, of course, the owner of the company, in 2007, right after that horrible shooting in Baghdad's Nisour Square, in which between 14 and 17 Iraqis were killed. That was really one of the things that he was weighing as he went overseas to try to see how radioactive his business had become, if you will, and to see just how tough it was going to be to continue to generate new business in the light of all these terribly negative headlines.
Yeah, in fact, I found it pretty interesting because as I was looking through the book, I went to the very, very end. I wanted to see how you summed things up after everything that you learned. And I was pretty amazed to find what I did. In fact, I'm going to put it on the screen real quickly. Talking about Erik here, you wrote, he learned to loathe the media. It was the media that played a large role in the downfall of his company, and he would never forget it. Why do you think that happened the way that it did?
You know, I think if you learn about him in the course of reading the book, and I really go into a lot of detail about his background and where he comes from,
yeah.
You kind of understand that he was a very, very private person before he started doing this. He was a Navy SEAL when he decided to start Blackwater as a training organization only. And he really never had been one to glom the headlines or to get any media attention. And
yeah,
I think
he actually went to the academy, didn't he? But he didn't finish. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, he decided that wasn't for him, and there's a really interesting story in the book about why he decided that wasn't for him. But he did go back to the Navy after and did become a SEAL and did serve as a SEAL for about 3 years. The interesting thing, though, is that, you know, he really... he didn't like the media, but he realized at a certain point after that shooting in Fallujah that he needed to use the media too. He needed to get into the PR. He needed to be a little bit more embracing of the media. And I think, you know, I've spelled out stories throughout the book that are very fascinating about how he came to that realization. But I think ultimately, you know, that really was the downfall of the company in a big, big way.
Yeah, you have to wonder, though, and again, as you go through this incredible account that you were able to put together here, of how the U.S. military would have functioned without Blackwater at that point during this particular conflict.
Yes. Actually, I was shocked when I was up at the State Department doing interviews there to hear that someone actually said the State Department would not be able to carry out its diplomatic functions in Iraq without Blackwater, without this one company. And my big question was, how is it possible that the United States government becomes so dependent on one company? You'll remember that right after that shooting, Heidi, Blackwater was suspended in Iraq for a few days, but in fact, they were reinstated, and people were kind of scratching their heads going, well, if they're so terrible, which it turns out that no charges were actually brought against the company for that shooting, but if they're so terrible, why are they still there? I mean, that's a whole nother question that I try to answer in the book as well.
Yeah, and also the awful tragedy that their own company suffered with 4 of their own men, and we all remember those terrible pictures that came out hanging from the bridge and all of that. The story is very complex. Before we let you go, Suzanne, where is this company going to be, which is now known as Z, right? Xenon, the inert gas. That's what they've changed the name to. So does that mean that they're sort of reinventing themselves? Where are they going to be in 5 years?
Well, it's a non-detectable gas, so what does that tell you? If you want to go under the headlines, that's the way to go. Get a nondescript name. They're still around, and they're still working for the Department of Defense in Afghanistan. You know, I've talked to people in the Pentagon who say they're doing a great job over there. So it's really hard to kind of label the company one thing or another, but I think when you read this book, you're really going to understand the complexities of why it is.
All right, Suzanne Simons, we sure do appreciate it. Once again, let's put the book on the screen. Master of War, congratulations to you. Today is the first release, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to run down to the bookstore after this.
Okay, very good. Buy them all. All right, Suzanne, thanks so much.
Thanks, Heidi.